Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway podcast. That's right. Your host and tour guide is Scott Prevett, a healer, hypnotist, and a magician. And your bus driver is Jason Gobelli, also a hypnotist, an entrepreneur, and a spiritual guide. Disclaimer, neither Jason, Scott, or any of our guests here today are licensed professional psychologists or psychiatrists. So please don't make any changes to any medication or treatments that you are currently on based on the conversation that you hear here today. Just hop on the bus and enjoy the ride. Trip with us on the Inner Revelation bus. That's right.
Hi, I'm Jason. Welcome to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway. We are excited today, aren't we, Scott?
Yep, we've got a great guest for you guys with visual representation.
That's right. That's right. We got the great Barbara Robertson. Barbara, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Glad to have this opportunity to share some time with you guys.
Welcome.
Well, we're grateful to have you here and travel down your magical psyche highway. So, shall we get started?
Let's.
Okay, Barbara, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm an artist and an art therapist, and I've been doing art all my life, basically since I could hold a crayon. It's always been a very gratifying activity for me. Although I have run into a creative block from time to time and puzzled through, so over time, I've gained quite a bit of insight into how to wrestle through those things. And then later in life, I discovered that there was such a thing as art therapy. So I was about to turn 50, and I realized that as an art therapist, you need to have a master's degree. And I thought, what? I'm going to grad school at 50? I'm going to be with people half my age. Am I really going to do this? And then I thought to myself, you know what? In a couple of years, I'm going to be 50 either way. So why not go for it? So I jumped in, did the training to become an art therapist, and have never looked back. It has brought me so much satisfaction, enjoyment, a feeling of making a contribution to other people. It's just been a very rich experience.
So, what did you do before the art therapy?
I did all sorts of versions of work that involved some kind of use of art. I created my own art. I changed media quite a few times, being as my ADD brain kind of ran out of patience with things that I'd been doing. So I'm always looking for novelty. So I did wearable art, little wire pins that look like dancers holding strands of beads for a while, painted silk scarves. Then I shifted into multimedia figure sculpture with little bronze faces that I had cast from a wax form that I made, and then used a wire armature, wrapped it with fabric and stuffing, draped it with fabrics, which I also love because I've also been sewing since I was a teen. And so I love the tactile interest of fabrics, beads, stone, wood, wire, you name it. So everything basically that I love to see and touch got sort of combined into that artwork. And then just as I was kind of completing a series in that style, I came across art therapy and really for a time invested all my creative energy in the therapy process of working with clients. So basically, it's working with clients who are in some kind of life crisis or challenge and seeking some direction and guidance about how to work through that. And I invite them to engage in mark making to simplify it. When you call it art, that scares people sometimes because we have this sort of we've culturally sanctified art into something that only a few people can do. And to my mind, nothing could be further than the truth. A 2-year-old can express themselves with marks. We have a little chalkboard at our 3-year-old grandson's height on our kitchen island, and he'll come up there and just put scribble marks on that chalkboard, and you can tell that he's so satisfied by doing that. And actually, one of the ways that I discovered the efficacy of art therapy was in using scribbling as a tactic to break through my own creative block. And I was astonished at that fact that just scribbling on a big piece of paper on the floor with the tablet of paper on the floor in front of me and just letting my hand move around and around and around with a big hard crayon began to really bring up a lot of emotion in me, which I had up until that point been stuffing down. And it was such an astonishing experience to be able to feel the feelings that I'd been afraid to let myself feel until that point. But having that crayon in my hand and just letting it wander over the page made a safe space for me to do that.
Well, it seems to me like you've been using art therapy all your life, long before you went to college.
I believe I have been. I believe that it has been the major influence that has kept me kind of on the rails most of the time.
So
Yes.
when was that first time, that aha moment when you realized, you know what, this art is really going to help make me a better person, or help get me through what I need to go
I was
through?
in my late 20s at that point. I had already gotten a degree in fine arts in painting. I was at that time doing ceramics as another kind of way of appeasing my novelty seeking brain. And I was teaching art classes at a community art center. And I had lost a grandparent about 3 years before that and had never shed a tear, even though he was the person in the extended family that we had that made me feel most accepted as I was. And I suspect that's why I didn't let myself grieve for him, because it would have been a pretty deep emotional chasm to go into, or at least that's how it felt. But when I did that scribbling, I really connected that with grieving the loss that I had experienced, and suddenly it became manageable. Through that act of just putting lines on paper and letting them move the way they want to, I discovered a capacity that I didn't know I had. But it was another good 20 years after that before I realized that there was this thing called art therapy that was used in the way that I've been using art most of my life.
So let me ask you, so you discovered this. Now, is this art therapy something that you picked up? I know you got your family, your husband, the kids, the grandkids. Are they into this too? Do you use this with them as a tool or to communicate with them?
Well, I've always encouraged my kids to engage in art, and I've done a lot of art projects and crafts things with them, made art materials available all the time, gained a little bit of insight about how they saw themselves and our family a couple of times from artwork they had done. But I was pretty wary of doing what my daughter called therapizing them. At one point, when she was coming close to her teen years, she put her hands on her hips and said, "Mom, don't therapize me." So there's a little bit of resistance there. But, with all the kids, I've always just loved to kind of get down on the floor with them when they're small, build with Lego blocks, um, draw. We've got some great drawings done by our daughter's sons when they were little superheroes, cartoon figures, but they're so original and creative. So basically, with them, I felt my job was just to kind of be open and accepting of whatever they came up with. And that's basically my theory when I'm working with clients, too. When I have clients who show some kind of resistance and anxiety around being expected to do art or being invited to be creative and deny that they have the capacity, what I tell them is whatever shows up on your paper is exactly what was meant to show up. I'm not going to judge it except by that standard. This is what you are expressing. And because that's what you're expressing, that's what I value. It's not about pretty or ugly, neat or messy. whatever it is exactly what it's meant to be.
So is this like handwriting analysis where if a person you're reading what's there and like they're dumping their unconscious on the paper?
I would say maybe a couple of percentage points of overlap there, but it's also not dependable just from my picking up what I see in the artwork. It really has to be like confirmed by what I observe in the client's process, what their affect seems to be, whether I noticed any shifts, whether I was able to ask them about a shift that I just noticed. Like sometimes you'll see a little flicker of a smile, and I'll stop and I'll say, "Wait a minute, what just happened?" I don't know. Well, I just saw a little bit of a grin happen. Do you remember what that might be about? And it's like 2 seconds ago, but they're not really conscious of it. But they'll go back and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, I guess I liked how that color looked right next to that other one." So, what I really like to do is kind of encourage them to be aware of that, because to me, that's what indicates that we have an inner compass that responds, or another way to think of it is our heart responds to what it sees that matters. So when something pleases us, it's in line with who we are, with what we value. And the more our heart can light it up, or our compass can sort of resonate with it and say, yeah, this direction, the more we begin to know what we're made of that is out of our consciousness.
So do those colors or symbols or marks, do they represent other things that are going on in life that you can pull out?
They can, yes. Yeah, I can look at things like if there's a lot of perseveration, which would be just repetition in how the lines are put down. So sketchiness across the page, um, that would suggest a level of anxiety within the person. And you can even kind of associate that with anxiety. You know, we're used to kind of seeing people with little but repetitive movements. They're not big. When they're anxious, they're kind of trying to stay small, but there's energy that they're containing. And so they're trying to like spend the energy somehow. So they're spending it with all this repetitive movement. And you can kind of think, you know, about people like chewing on their nails, that same kind of repetitive self-soothing, in fact. I have one beautiful drawing that a client did that was made up of, the whole thing was like 1/4 inch long marks, but she blended different colors of marker to make a beautiful blue sky at sunrise or sunset, the sun halfway visible above the sea. And the whole surface was little short lines, but when you backed up, it was almost like a impressionist painting where things are not clearly defined, but as you back up, they gel. And it was such a peaceful, serene image that she created. So the process of doing it was self-soothing, but the result was also soothing because it just embodied the serenity that she was really needing.
So do you find clients that are reluctant to be creative and draw because, or put marks on there because they're afraid that if they put them down there, you'll see how messed up they really are?
It's not so much that as that they've probably been shamed for not drawing well. I mean, in art therapy, we kind of refer to those as art injuries, where your art teacher looks at your drawing and says, "You can't make the sky yellow. Who ever heard of a yellow sky? Skies are not yellow." I actually heard someone say that to somebody in the third grade. And of course, she was crushed because, you know, it's right out in front of everybody. You can't make the sky yellow. Well, are you kidding me? I mean, even as a third grader, I knew that was way off base. But I'm sure that she was pretty hesitant before she put yellow any near a sky after that.
Kind of like whenever I was in the second grade and my nun told me to lip sing instead of singing with the rest of the class in the school play.
Yes, yes, Yeah, I shared the nun experience. Although I will say one formative experience that I got in the third grade was we had art class, which amounted to getting a postcard handed to us each week to paste into a little spiral notebook. But the postcards were images of master paintings. I remember Renoir's little girl with a watering can, Marc Chagall's image with a blue cow's head in the sky and people floating. A couple of other things. It was pretty radical for the mid 50s, that would have been, because they were not all just realistic, sort of conformist artworks. They were really across the board, all different styles. And I think that opened my eyes to wow, there's more than one right way to do this thing. And
Nice.
that's really stayed with me, more than one right way. And there are times when I turn to math or Sudoku or something like that because I want to know the one right way, and I know I want to find the one right way, and it's very satisfying to do that. But that's sort of as an antidote
Nice.
to the rest of it.
Nice. Scott, come on now. I know you got some questions that you're ready to roll with.
So let me ask you this about most people use art as some kind of catharsis or a way to relax, and you found a way to turn that into your passion. So what do you do to relax?
What do I do to relax? At this point in time, I kind of am using a lot of what you might call avoidance strategies. I do block puzzles. Things that games that involve spatial organization, um, shifting blocks around until like Tetris, you get a stack of them and then they slide off the screen and then you have that little ooh moment, a little dopamine drip. um, I've always loved reading, um, hanging out with friends. Yeah, I find some self-care strategies to weave in and out of things. Spend time with the grandkids. That's inviting because especially when they're really preschoolers, they're so open to play. And I really believe that play and creativity are very closely linked. And just like I think we overvalue fine art and creativity as sort of an exotic talent only owned by a rare few of us, I think play is something that we shun as adults because we think if we do that, we're not serious enough, we're not grown up enough, it's too childish. But I think play and creativity are just intimately connected. And one reason I think so is because that inner critic that we carry, that is sort of the part of us, the little voice that responds to times when we did get hurt, doesn't want us to experience being shamed for making the sky yellow again. And is always sort of outwardly looking for the next potential rejection or humiliation to show up. Doesn't really know who we are inside because they're always outward focused, scanning the environment for any danger. But when we play, we let ourselves loose from expectation. Play is really just a process of trying something and seeing what happens. And when
Nice.
I'm around my young grandkids,
So
especially, one daughter had twins a couple of years ago, and just watching them as they got more mobile and then began to be able to handle toys. One of them is a real tinkerer and he'll just play around with what can I make this do. So one time he put this little hollow kind of like a cup on a toy that had a spindle. So he put it upside down on the spindle and then he started ticking the side of the cup and just watching it spin around. The other one is meanwhile climbing all over the furniture and practically swinging from the lamp on the ceiling. He's like big motor guy, while the other guy is little motor guy. But they're both trying something and seeing what happens. Like
so when people draw how do you get them to what they draw on this piece of paper? I mean, do you set up a thing to where you give them an idea of what? Because some people, it sounds like, come up with positive drawings, and other people come up with negative drawings. So is it something that they need or want, or is it something? How is that set up?
Well, that really varies case to case. If I'm doing a group, I will kind of bring in a theme. For a while, 5 or 6 years, I was working at an addiction rehab residential program, and once a week I would go in. It was a program for women only, and women who still had young kids and still had custody of those kids could have the kids in with them. So it was really, a lovely idea to support that and to help the kids not have to suffer too much separation while their moms were getting back, into healing themselves. But there would be lots of different things, that I could come up with to invite them to take a look at where they are now, where they've been, where they want to go. One really valuable thing can be inviting them to identify, picture in some way what they want to move into, what they want to become. Um, Another strategy, this one kind of stands out for me. I don't know if you've ever seen those little Ecuadorian worry dolls. They're tiny little wire figures that are
Mm.
wrapped with yarn and thread. And the story is that before you go to bed, you tell this little doll what you're worried about, and you want to get a good night's sleep so that you can be in good shape to tackle solving the problem tomorrow. And you know that tackling it with having it racing through your brain isn't going to do much. So if the doll could please hold the worry for you while you sleep, and you tuck it under your pillow, and hopefully your system buys into that, and you get a good night's sleep. And then in the morning, the worry doll is there, and you're refreshed a little bit. So maybe you've got a little more bandwidth to bring to whatever the problem is that you need to solve. So in this group, I had some of those old-fashioned clothespins that just poke down over the line, and there's a little round knob on the top. So I invited them to create worry dolls with those things, with some pipe cleaners and some strips of fabric to wrap around them. Just make very rudimentary human figures. So draw the face on the little knob, put some hair on. I had a woman in this group who had been there for weeks and would hardly bring herself to lift a pencil. She would just insist that she's not creative, so she's not going to do it. So I'm like, okay, this is really an invitation for toxic shame for her. So I'm not going to push it. I don't want to create something that's going to make somebody suffer. So I'm like, okay, well, just take in what's going on around you. It's all good. Well, when we passed out these clothespins and fabric, she found the most glittery metallic fabrics and sequin things, and she put a turban around the head and some gold lame around the body. And then at sharing at the end of group, I invited everyone to say why this particular doll and the way that they had made it was good for carrying their worry. What showed that the dolls were strong enough to take their worries. So it came to her turn. She really was clearly pleased with what she'd done. She said, my doll takes my worries and turns them into songs. She's a nightclub singer. I went, oh my gosh, the blues. That's amazing. And that was her, that was her like total leap into creativity.
Nice.
It was
So,
it was just exciting to see that.
speaking of exciting, Barbara, how do our viewers get a hold of you?
I am reachable by email, Robertson, Robertson .atr, not ART as you might think. So be careful with that point because your fingers are going to go ART, but it's ATR at gmail.com. And
Do you
I'll
have a
tell you about
website?
that ATR thing. So it's the first certification that you get from the American Art Therapy Association, the professional association. And what it means is registered art therapist. But if you put those initials in order, it spells rat. So nobody wanted to be B. Robertson rat. So it became art therapist registered. So that's what the ATR comes from. So I would love to hear from you. That would be delightful. I've also got a website for my art therapy practice, which is robertsonarttherapyllc.com. And you can also message me through that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Scott, you have any other questions?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and taking time out of your schedule and coming and being on our podcast. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. I just love talking about, what I've been doing now for so many years, and how how helpful it can be and how wonderful it is when I see people tapping into creativity that they didn't even know they had.
Barbara, is that your art on your hand?
Oh yeah, no, it's not actually my art, but it is art that I co-designed with 5 different tattoo artists
Okay.
to celebrate different events in my life with color. Because at some point I decided, I should wear my art. So it's an
Nice.
evolving image.
So Barbara, we're not through with you yet. One more question, the big question.
Sure.
What are your words of wisdom for our viewers?
If you want to discover that you are creative, let yourself play with whatever looks inviting to you, whether it's crayons, paints, knitting, crocheting, baking a pie, making soup, anything at all that you are going to put together from whatever comes to hand for you. I invite you to take a playful attitude towards it and see what doesn't come up for you as you do it. And then pay attention to moments when you feel yourself pleased, when you feel, oh, I like that. Oh, that's nice, because that's your inner compass speaking. When you can tune into that, you've got guidance wherever you go.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. It's been great traveling down your magical psyche highway. We've certainly enjoyed it. And for our viewers out there, we're glad you're here too. We've definitely enjoyed having you come along for the ride. If you like us, please follow us, subscribe to the channel, share this everywhere. If you like us, give us the thumbs up. If you think we're assholes, we don't care. Just give us a thumbs down. We're just glad you're here, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks for coming.
Wow, what a trip. Thanks for taking that journey with us today. Please like us, share us, and enlighten us with your views of the topics we drove into today. We appreciate you and love reading your comments. Thanks again, and we hope to see you back on the bus next week. That's right.